Ready? All right. I'd like to call this special meeting, the Solvang City Council, for Monday, February 8th at 5:30. Time is 5:30. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Infante,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Arona,
Here.
Councilmember Thomas,
Here.
Mayor Urick,
Here.
all present.
Can I have Councilmember Infante lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Certainly. Good stand, please. And we'll start. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, are there any public communications, written or verbal, for this time? Madam City Clerk?
This would be a public comment on items on the agenda. Our doors are open. There's nobody here from the public, and there's also nobody with us on Zoom, so there's no public comment.
And can you read item number 2? Or,
I believe City Attorney will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council meet in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, Subdivision B, performance evaluation for the city manager.
all right. So we'll now adjourn for our special session.
しばんに本願します少し。
ああ、そうか。
Okay. All right. We ready?
Jeremy?
All right, I'd like to bring us back into session, regular session right now from the closed session. And Mr. City Attorney, would you please give everyone a review?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council met in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, Subdivision B, to discuss the city manager's performance evaluation. There was no reportable action.
Thank you for that. And I will now close the meeting, or now close the special meeting. And now, I would like to now call the regular meeting of the Solvang City Council for Monday, February 8th. And we'll call the meeting to order at 6:24. And Madam City Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Councilmember Clark?
Here.
Councilmember Infante?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Morona?
Here.
Councilmember Thomas?
Here.
Mayor Yurg?
Here.
All present?
And can I have Councilmember Clark lead us in the Pledge of
Yes,
Allegiance?
please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, Madam City Clerk, would you read off item number 1 on our regular agenda?
Item number 1 is public communications, written or verbal. The council welcomes your input. At this time, you may address the council on items not on the agenda and consent agenda. Time limit is 3 minutes. State law does not allow the council to discuss or take action on issues not on the agenda, except that members of the council or staff may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed by persons exercising their public testimony rights. Staff may be asked to follow up on such items.
Right. Do we have anyone here in the audience that would like to make any public comment regarding items that are not on the agenda?
I believe I have two
had
slips here.
2 slips. One was Mr. Jim Bannicus. Oh, okay. First one, Jim, would you like to come on up? Just state your name.
My name is Jim Bannicus. I'm a resident of Solvang, and I'd like to thank you fellows and lady for being on the city council and for the good job that you're doing. I came here to talk about what's a project that was, I don't want to say done away with because it is on the current CIP, but it's about the Veterans Memorial Hall canceled ADA bathrooms retrofit to make that building, which is the community designated emergency shelter, a California legal emergency shelter, should it be needed. I dropped off a 7-page packet for each of you this afternoon to City Manager Xenia Bradford. It is an email trail that started with me contacting Councilmember Mark Infante about it. And in his reply to me, he thought it had already been completed. Unfortunately, the previous city council already had the grandiose idea of creating a Solvang 2.0 project back in 2019, which would affect our Solvang Memorial Building that would have included tearing it down. So they stopped the city manager, then David Gassaway, from calling for bids to do the ADA project and tabled the plans already in place. As you very well know, we in this area didn't take kindly to their idea. With a lot of community help and support, we were able to cancel their grandiose idea. My purpose here is that in the next few months, you'll be considering the new budget for the fiscal year and updating the Capital Improvement Program, or CIP. I would ask that you consider putting this ADA retrofit on an upcoming agenda and that it be moved from where it is in the 2020-21 CIP to a soon-to-do position in the new 2021-22 CIP. Keep in mind that not only the ADA bathrooms, but an emergency generator also needs to be installed to meet the state ADA requirements. I thank you for your time and consideration of the much-needed project. That's it.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Bannicus. And next speaker slip I have is from Tracy Baird.
Hi, thank you. Tracy from the Solvang Chamber. We wanted to let our businesses know that on the 26th of this month, we'll be receiving 30,000 masks for our community, for our businesses, and they will be free to our community. They will be in the back of Chomp at the room for about 3 days, and we will be passing them out. So we do hope our businesses are able to come do that. We think that's a little plus we've been able to do for our business community. And we are working with our EDC for the month of April to bring in our 14 pallets for the whole Santa Barbara County again. So we do have a lead on that, and we will be doing a sign-up for that one. This one will be just come get it on the 26th of this month. So we hope the businesses do respond, and we're trying to help them out a little bit. And then I think we would like to put a request in. Do we put the other one in now or later?
I think now would be fine.
We sent an email to you today. We would like to think about you considering having the Chamber of Commerce do the State of the City, and that would be after the fiscal year because of COVID-19, and we think more people would attend. We think we would have a better, and we would have a good fiscal year of the numbers to do it after July 31st. So we would like to request, it's been done previously, and to work with you in the city and to help host it with you.
Thank you, Tracy. Could I just, real quick, clarify the date and the time one more time? I didn't hear a time when they could show up. Is it any time during?
We think anytime after the next fiscal cycle. We think from August on, and that's when most of the cities do their State of the City. And I think with COVID right now, I think it would allow us. So we would like to work with you on a date and location as it comes up, but we know we can do a very good job with that program.
I know historically the chamber was always the one that put together that with the past city managers. And I misspoke, but I was meaning the masks. What day and time frame for the mask distribution
Oh,
that you had mentioned?
I'm sorry. February 26th it will be, and it'll start like after 6 o'clock at night. We should have them in by
Okay.
5 p.m. We're from our supplier that we're receiving them from free.
Okay, thank you
Oh,
for
thank
that
you.
clarification. Is there anyone else here? I don't have any other speaker slips at the time, but is there anyone else here that would like to speak? And
Would anybody on Zoom like to speak? I see one hand. Julie Glenn, items not on the agenda or consent agenda. Please go ahead, Julie Glenn.
Yes, hi. I'd like to speak tonight about the moke cars that are around town. And I certainly don't want to trample on anyone's business, especially during COVID. But I'm very concerned about what I consider a safety issue. I've been seeing more and more people driving through town with babies and infants in their arms. They don't have the proper safety seats. They don't have the proper restraint at all. I mean, a woman with a brand new baby was carrying it in her arms in the back seat. So she was in the back seat, as if that would make any difference. I've contacted, spoken with someone from the Highway Patrol. I also spoke to one of the deputies called me from the Santa Barbara Solvang substation, and we chatted about it. And he said, basically, if any of us community members see this, to please call 911 so that they can take action. The thing to do is to note whatever color the moke is and what direction, what street you saw it on, what direction it was going on, and call 911. So I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the safety of those infants and children, and hope that the community at large will call 911. I implore the city to look at their contract and see if there's something that could be put in there to really push, because I don't think they're allowed on the streets without following proper safety protocols. So they are a vehicle on our roadways. So as far as the sheriff's told me, they have to follow all of the safety requirements that in California. So that's what I see as critically important right now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Is there any other ones that?
Would anybody else like to speak on items not on
think-
the agenda that's on Zoom?
Looks like Sheila is raising a hand.
Sheila is raising her physical hand.
I am raising my hand. First of all, Mayor Urick, council members, I haven't had a chance to congratulate the new members, and I'm doing that tonight, which is, I wanted to do this tonight because you've got an item on the next agenda that is a runoff of 2.0, and I think you know what I'm talking about. But I'm not here, yay or nay, about anything but the traffic. For those of us that have lived here a very long time, we have watched the traffic get worse and worse. Granted, during COVID, with a lot of people not coming, the traffic is not nearly as bad. But if I have to go see my family in Buellton, I have to go around because it's bumper to bumper from about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on. Fortunately, my other family in San Ynez, it's in the opposite direction. But with the projects that have been projected by the mill owner, the current owner, Mr. St. George, I believe, there's going to be a big problem as far as traffic and parking. And I really am just giving this council a heads up. I know all of you are very familiar with the way the community felt about 2.0. And I don't think anything has changed other than the fact that we saved the vets hall. So please, please think about it between now and when it's on the agenda 2 weeks from now. It's going to be horrible to put something like that there. And I'm not opposed to low-income housing. It's very successful in Buellton, and I understand some is going into San Ynez. There is a way to do a compromise on the other side of the city for low-income housing. And a high-rise hotel is really going to create traffic hazards. So, like I said, this is just a heads up, and it gives you something to talk about between now and then, and I hope you will consider it deeply. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any others out in virtual Zoom land that?
If anybody else would like to speak at this time, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Items not on the agenda or consent agenda. See no other public comment.
All right. We will now move to the city manager's report.
Thank you. So I would like to just follow up, for starters, on the meeting that took place this past Saturday on the general plan update. It is a process that we just started. We're at the very beginning of it. The overall thought of the general plan update was adopted and was part of the 2020-22 financial plan adoption. It does span through a 2-year span as far as the budget. We awarded the contract to a contractor in October of 2020 and basically aligned the cycle of the update with the new election cycle in a 2-year term. The first community workshop was held on Saturday, February the 6th, and we had good participation compared to other communities. According to our consultants, we had 57 participants on Zoom and had many follow-up sign-ups on our website during that meeting and following that meeting. We are also currently in the process of reaching out to different stakeholders who are not individuals, but organizations in the community that would be interested in this input. And we are getting very good response from those organizations responding to us and wanting to be part of this. It seemed like the first workshop went well and we received good community feedback and engagement. We have heard more feedback today at the City Hall with people calling and coming in to pick up the cards to pass on to additional people. So I think there is a lot of kind of good excitement at this point for this general plan. And like I mentioned, it will be a process that will take some time. It's a comprehensive general plan that will take 2 years to get through. It spans over a 2-year financial plan. And what it really will provide to this community is a long-term vision and the goals for the community to achieve, which we then as professional staff can work towards achievement or be in alignment with. So as we talk about all the long-term structures, all of our CIP, our water, wastewater systems, our economic development, all of those things would then be in turn aligned with this vision of the community. So we very much appreciate everybody's time on Saturday and everybody's excitement about this in this first kickoff and the first step. There is a website set up for it, which is plansolvang.com. That is the channel of communication for this plan. So everybody that is interested in being part of the general plan update should be going through this website where all of the documents will be posted and any kind of notices. Currently, there is the first newsletter posted on the website, and we will include Spanish translation to also reach out into other population that I think maybe wasn't as represented at the kickoff. So we'll do our best to reach out to them as well. In about a month from now, there will be a new newsletter coming out, which will be informative newsletter dealing with the next step of this general plan update. And the next step of the general plan update would be the visioning assets, issues, and opportunities. So that is a really important milestone to where the community will have an opportunity to speak about its vision into the future. What assets do we have here in Solvang? What history should we build upon? What issues do we want to resolve? Traffic, others, and what opportunities are there for the city of Solvang? So everybody, this will be a continuous notification through plansolvang.com and these newsletters as well as e-blasts and communications going through the utility bills. But the second workshop is something that we would look forward to everyone's feedback, and hopefully those who participated with us have reached out to at least a couple more people, if not more.
We want 2 more.
Right. Next item here is state of the city. Generally speaking, the city of Solvang has held its states of the city in the February-March timeframe. A lot of other cities also hold them in the winter timeframe, but it's not a must-have in the winter timeframe. So based on the history, I had kind of penciled in the date of the March 12th. The council can definitely provide with direction in terms of what you're looking for here. And if you want to consider some other time frame, as Tracy Beer from Chamber of Commerce has just mentioned, one of the themes, which is obviously the very important theme for the city of Solvang this year, is the 110th anniversary. So I've had some conversations with Everhome Museum on this as well to make sure that we recognize that theme as they also work at the Everhoy with kind of a year-long celebration in whichever way they can, COVID provided. So that is something that council can provide general direction on in terms of what you would like to see on the dates. The City of Solvang website update, we are moving forward with that. Staff is working on the City of Solvang official site web update. That's our www.solvang.com website. The first step that we have now is a survey that we have posted on our official website. It's about 9 questions, so it shouldn't take too long. But we are approaching this from first receiving any feedback that we can gather in this initial stage from our community. And we do ask the question of, are you a resident, are you a business, are you from elsewhere on that survey. So I would very much welcome everybody's input, and we'll continue to outreach through email blasts and Facebook postings to make sure that we receive a good amount of feedback. We expect this survey to be open through February 28th, but we are really looking for what are people looking for when they go to our website? What are the important features that they want to see? Once we have that feedback, we'll come back to council with recommendations and proposals on a plan to update website, and that will drive the RFP and the scope of work based on the feedback as to how we go about updating that website. The quarterly newsletter, new header, I will do my best. I'm sure the names will say it a little differently. But the next edition is on track to be out in March of 2021, and that will be sent out with the utility bills as well as will be distributed electronically. Pickleball court project has been a very positive project with all the employees. Lots of positive energy here between the community and all of our employees. We are this week engaging in a last kind of stretch and reach out to the community to reach our fundraising goal of $10,000. We are 7,000 plus 9,000 probably already committed in-kind labor, but we are still asking for additional donations to meet that goal. So we'll be reaching out to our community one more time with the pickleball courts and making this project happen for the community. We are hoping that weather permitting, this will be opened in April. Just a little bit of an update on COVID-19. There is additional business grants that are being available out there. There was another round that went out. We would recommend contacting the Solvang Chamber of Commerce for assistance with those. The council did approve an increase in budget for cleaning of the public restrooms. So that is at work now with additional cleanings. And we'll, of course, as we begin to see the reopening right now and higher activity in the tourism again in the city, we are continuing to monitor the seating availability, the cleanliness of that, and the trash levels. A little bit of good news is that our hotel rooms last week were over 40% reportedly occupancy, so we are coming back to life. Hopefully that will stay that way, and the next financial forecast report that you will receive will be a more positive news than it was the last time. We will be, once again, going into the financial plan development, or rather the budget. We will be going into the second year of the financial plan that was adopted last year. However, it is a new budget, and there is still an opportunity for council to set some goals for that budget. So the next steps to keep in mind is that you will be receiving, once again, an updated forecast, which will tell you what your financial capacity is. You will then have a council goals workshop to where you would be able to make any amendments to what you would like to see in the next fiscal year of 21-22 in terms of goals and what you would like the staff to achieve. We will be bringing to you, based on those goals, a preliminary operating and capital improvement budget presentation to where you will be able to tell us as staff if we have interpreted your goals correctly and we have programmatically programmed those appropriately. Based on that feedback, we would come back to you with final budget for adoption at the end of June. A couple of other financial items going on here is the general plan fee study that is in progress. We have now signed a contract and have contractors starting to work on that. The fee studies for general fund haven't been updated in a long time in several areas, including building and planning, as well as other user fees. And if we are not updating the fees on a regular basis, we are basically losing money because we're expending more than we are recapturing in that revenue. There's an RFP out for water and wastewater fee update right now. That will be a little bit longer and more complex study, but we're currently advertising for bids for that, and that will be going forward in the next month. Now, permitting software, we are making progress. We are expecting that the go live will be in the early summer of 2021. This software automates all of the permitting processes and basically attaches all the data to where you can look at it even on the map, kind of like GIS, to where everything is attached to that parcel, to that address. All of your planning, building, public works, business license, and then your code enforcement actions would all be within this one software that's automated and provides with a step-by-step process to where there is less confusion as to how to handle the same type of situations. Also provides with conformity. It will also provide with a self-service feature to where our customers will not have to necessarily talk to somebody to know where their project is, to where their permit is going forward. And our biggest hurdle in this project has been just scanning of lots and lots of paper. We've gotten through about 40 large boxes right now. We got about that many plus more to go, and it's really having that historical data for each parcel will be important for usefulness of the software. Now, advanced calendar for your next meeting on February 27 will be a significant item coming out of Public Works, Wastewater Division, the wastewater treatment plant aeration system award. We will be coming to you with a request and recommendation to approve a contract. There's a fairly significant cost with this component, but we will be explaining to you why this is such an important step in a phase one of the larger planned plant upgrade. You will also receive a marketing update from IDK, which you receive monthly. We have developed a quarterly employee recognition program. Some other cities do such programs as well. It's planned and will be introduced to you as a very much employee-driven kind of program with lots of employee participation. It doesn't replace any existing programs and the well-loved YES awards that our employees like on quarterly basis or the recognition of the years of service. This is an additional program to recognize employees based on nominations from other employees for exceptional performance for a quarter, and we are proposing that there's a little bit of an award that goes with that. So we look forward to bringing that to council for your consideration. The next item will be a law enforcement services contract policy direction. As I've mentioned to you before, we have received preliminary numbers from the Sheriff's Department and from the county that are significantly higher than the prior contract. So this is something that the 4 cities that contract with the Sheriff's Department, Carpinteria, Goleta, Buell, and Solvang, are working on resolving collectively in discussing this issue with the county. We are continuously meeting on this topic at this point. Next time you will receive a much more detailed report from about the options and where we are and what the next steps will be, just to update you, make you aware of where you are, and also receive any policy direction if you would like to see any more significant changes happen with that contract. So that report will be coming to you on the 22nd. And then the last item is something that we heard of in the public comment is the 1783 Mission Drive Hotel project term sheet for council consideration. And just so that everybody is aware, the planning department right now is processing an application that was submitted some months ago now under the new law, the housing crisis law that went in a year ago, where cities are essentially put on a very streamlined schedule to process projects that are housing projects that are priority of the state. So we have very little consideration there, very little way of, we basically can't refuse. We have to process this project. We can only hold 5 Brown Act public meetings on it, and at the end of the day, after the 5 public meetings and meeting all the deadlines, the council or the city has to essentially approve the project unless there's significant issues that can be shown by the city for public health and safety issues. And then the judicial review and the burden is on the city to prove that. So it's a project that's not very much in our control. I just want to have everybody understand that. We are processing it because it's been submitted that way and it's going forward. What this term sheet is something that the developer has submitted to the city as a term sheet for council consideration. So what the applicant here is looking for is council approval of certain terms to potentially consider an alternative project at that site of 1783 Mission Drive, where also known the old lumber yard, to where he's proposing a hotel project instead. So that item, because it's been submitted to the city, to the staff for council consideration, is planned on being presented to you at the next council agenda. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions of the staff report?
I have a question regarding to the housing project on the lumberyard property, and maybe the city attorney can answer my question. I understand it's private property. Mr. St. George can choose to go into the hotelier business, or he can develop housing. My concern would be regarding parking and accessibility either way. I wouldn't want us to be forced to approve a project that we know are going to create more traffic problems from everybody that lives in that area. So how would it be our burden to prove how it would affect traffic negatively? How would that work? Or are we just stuck with whatever he proposes?
Well, you have a couple layers there. First of all, the first layer is housing is an important focus of the state legislature right now. They have removed a lot of local options for controlling land use when housing is involved, particularly in affordable housing. So if a developer comes in and proposes affordable housing, the restrictions are even greater on local government. If this is simply a hotel project, then you do have the ability as part of the environmental review or the conditions of approval to impose parking requirements, traffic flow requirements, and so on. I wouldn't want to get too much into the weeds about the details of this particular project, since it may come to you at some point in some fashion. And this item is not on the agenda tonight, but those are very general parameters of what you might be looking at.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
No.
No? I guess I just have one. Would I be recusing myself from the from the sheriff's department?
I'll give you the lawyer answer. It depends. In the vast majority of situations, none of the decisions that will come to you as a member of the city council will have an impact on your personal financial interests. In other words, nothing that you're going to be approving here will necessarily increase your salary while you're working for the sheriff's department, your assignment with the sheriff's department, and so on. So I would say in the vast majority of cases, you will not have a conflict. There could be, I suppose, some situations where if you established a position within the city of Solvang and you were the only person in the sheriff department qualified to do it, and you knew that in advance, then it might have a tendency to affect your personal financial interests, but that would be an unusual situation.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
I'm assuming my long-term relationship with the department also would not be a conflict.
It would be even further attenuated because you're not a current employee.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Item number 3, council comments, requests. Any council comments that we have at this time?
Yes, two things. First, I was here for the Saturday session on the general plan upgrade update, and that was terrific. I learned a lot of things that I needed to know in order to help be effective in this position as a city council member. Got a lot of input, and I thought that was great. We have some considerations as far as which parts of it should be upgraded right away, considering COVID, and which should be delayed possibly. Well, there's a couple of things that we'll need to discuss in the future. But I thought that was a tremendous session. I would really like to do that again, whether it's the upgrade or not, just to get people in to help us understand what the residents think. One other quick comment, pull this up real quick. There was an item in the Santa Barbara Independent that there is, if you have a small business, now they define small business as an annual revenue of 3 million or less, there is a foundation that is granting up to $10,000 for restaurants, small restaurants. And I believe if you talk to Tracy at the Chamber of Commerce, she can help you with that. But it's wonderful because even though it's coming out of Santa Barbara Foundation, they specifically said, and San Ynez Valley. And I believe Tracy told me that she has already helped several businesses get involved with that funding distribution. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I just have one. Since the last meeting, I've been promoting and getting as many residents as involved as possible in our Plan Solvang. And obviously, you all know that I was not there at this weekend meeting. My wonderful wife, Alicia, and my kids took me away for the weekend, planned it several months ago. So I try not to miss things like this. I look forward to working with everybody more. I sure had a great time, and I can't feel my legs.
I would like to make a request of staff so that we can review what our emergency plan is. There are some concerns on part of the community that we don't know who is in charge. There have been the staff is different from when they were previously trained to now. So I'd like to take a time to review that. If there are people that need to be trained, that they get further trained, and so that the community knows that we have a plan to take care of things in case we need to.
Just one quick comment. I probably like most of you, I take a lot of time walking around town, especially on the weekends. And it's just really good to see the shops open up and the people sitting down and enjoying their meals and kind of getting back as far as we possibly can at this point to some sense of normalcy. Talk with a lot of the business owners. They're very happy. They'll be a lot more happy when all this goes away, as we all will, but it's a lot better than it was 2-3 weeks ago.
All right, and then I'll ditto all of your comments, and Robert, I hope you can feel your legs in the next couple of days.
I have to say, the only time I thought maybe COVID isn't so bad is on a ski resort because it was really uncrowded.
There you go.
It's other reactions.
There you go. Just one thing I'd like to just mention here. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for being a part of the public forum that we had on Saturday. I was really pleased with the turnout that we had. I am hoping that we can get 3 times that amount for the next one, and I am thankful that we're able to get a Spanish translation of that as well. So I appreciate you guys taking that into consideration. And speaking of cultures, I just wanted to remind everyone that February is the Black History Month, and I just wanted to bring that up. It's a time to remember and the contributions and to celebrate the contributions of our African American and our Black folks in our country and in our city and in our county. And it's a month-long observance. It was founded and goes back to Negro History Week which was created in 1926 in February, but in the 60s was when it became a month-long celebration for the Black community and the African American community. And I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention and thank everyone that is of Black or African American descent. Thank you for your contributions. I know for me, I grew up listening to music that came out of Detroit, and I love it. There's no substitute for that. And then some of the blues that came out of New Orleans and Chicago, just amazing. So and then of course the athletic accomplishments, and then even now that we have in place, you know, we had a past Black president, as well as now we have the first Black and woman vice president. So just keep on dreaming. Everyone is important. So that's all I have for comments right now.
Thank you. May I request the council if you have any direction to give on the state of the city timing? Just because if we are doing it in March, it's a work product that's going on right now, versus if you would like to delay.
I think I just heard about the request from the Chamber of Commerce to hold it later. My concern then is that it's in the middle of summer, so not as many business owners might be able to participate at that time. Right now, it might be easier because it's not as busy and we're just getting kicked back into gear. But I would encourage city staff to work with the Chamber of Commerce to find a time when it would work.
I have a tendency to think it should be pushed off a little bit more for a couple of reasons. Potentially, if it went into August, it could actually be a fairly live meeting, which would be wonderful. I don't know. I don't know if it has to be pushed off that far. I think it's an idea. I think March is pushing it. We've got so much going on right now. New council, things happening. So
Right.
I don't know how far to push it off, but I think pushing it off is a good idea, and working with the chamber is the way to do that.
Do we-
I agree.
I'd say, yeah, I think we have a consensus to
Okay,
work
thank
with
you.
the chamber and try to move it back a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up too, Tracy. Appreciate that. All right, we'll now move to the consent agenda. Madam City Clerk, can you please read the items on the consent agenda?
Items on the consent agenda are approval of the agenda as presented, approval of minutes of the special and regular city council meeting on January 25, 2021, receive warrant register for the month of December 2020, and approve city attorney invoices for Price, Purcell, and Parma for services provided in December 2020.
Do any council members have any items that they would like to pull at this time?
No.
Yes. The attorney's billing. Let's pull that for consideration. A couple questions I have about it.
Any other items from any council members that would like to pull any items? Can I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item D?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Morona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Uhrig.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
So we're just going to
If,
table it for now?
Yes, let's just table that for now. I need to look at something. It seems to me that the billing has exceeded what they promised as a maximum per month of 25,000. They billed it at 45,000, I think. I've got some questions about it that I'd like to look into before we go any farther forward with that billing.
What the rest of, is there a second to table item 3D or 4D, I'm sorry?
Is there a motion to
Table it?
table item 3D?
So
4D,
moved.
I'm sorry.
A second?
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Urick.
Yes.
Item 4D is tabled.
Okay. Moving on to the regular business items. First, we have a public hearing item. Madam City Clerk, would you please read the title for agenda item number 5?
Item number 5 is the second hearing of the ordinance establishing design review committee, and the city attorney will present the report.
And the city attorney will present the report as soon as he gets to that page in his agenda.
So there is a staff report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Before you this evening is the second reading of the ordinance establishing the Design Review Committee. At your last meeting, City Council introduced an ordinance that would establish the membership, terms of office, duties, and organizations of the Design Review Committee, and making certain changes to the municipal code to conform to that. There's also a resolution next in order before you this evening that rescinds the prior resolution which established the Branding and Design Committee, the BDC, which also confirmed the disestablishment of the BAR, which was established in 1993. The recommendation before you is to adopt the second reading of the ordinance. It will go into effect in 30 days. The resolution would go into effect immediately if adopted, but it would set the effective date of the dissolution of the prior resolution 30 days out, which is concurrent with the ordinance before you. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that report. Are there any questions of their staff report? Seeing none, do we have any public comment?
Do we have anybody on Zoom? We don't have anybody in person. Do we have anybody on Zoom that would like to make a comment on this item? Please raise your virtual Zoom hand using a symbol, or just unmute yourself at this point if you would like to speak on this item. Seeing no public comment.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move we approve the second reading.
Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Madam City Clerk?
Councilmember
roll
Clark?
call.
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Urick.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Great. Madam City Clerk?
Then there's also the resolution, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Madam City Clerk, would you please read the title of item number 6?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to clarify
Sorry.
that we have a resolution in addition to the second reading of the ordinance. They're separate actions that
Oh.
you'll need to take to
Oh.
approve
I'm
the
sorry.
resolution.
So I'll move that we accept the resolution as well?
Can I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Urick.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Keeping me in line.
I have a question. On that, when are the selections made on this? Because we have more, yeah,
You have an
Tonight.
agenda item.
it's coming up, okay.
Yeah. All right. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of item number 6?
Item number 6 is resolution adopting Measure A, 5-year local program of projects for the fiscal years 2022, 2026, and our Public Works Director, Matt van der Linden, will present the report.
Thank you.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Good evening, Mayor Yurg and council members. Matt Vanderlinden, your Public Works Director and City Engineer. And as our city manager mentioned, this is the presentation on our Measure A 5-year program of projects. So what I'll be discussing is a little bit of background for you on Measure A. And one of the programs within Measure A includes circulation improvements and funding for circulation improvements. Then we'll discuss SBCAG, that's the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments, revenue estimates that they provide to the city for Measure A. And then we'll talk about our 5-year program of projects specifically and present our staff recommendations. So Measure A is a 0.5% sales tax that was approved by the voters back in November 2008. That's a 0.5 cent sales tax here just within Santa Barbara County. And 34.5% of those funds that are generated are designated for Highway 101 improvements and widening. And I'm sure you've all traveled down to the LA area over the last 10 years and, well, especially the last 5 years, and seen lots of construction through Carpinteria and Santa Barbara and all that. So that's being funded primarily by Measure A. And then the SBCAG staff has leveraged that funding to obtain other grants, federal and state grants, to make up the difference in funding needed. But then 64.5% of the Measure A funds generated are divided among all the local agencies within Santa Barbara County based on population. And then there's 1% remaining that is designated for the SBCAG staff for administering this whole program. So the Measure A ordinance covers a 30-year period. It began, funding began being distributed to local agencies in 2011, and that will continue until the year 2040. And one of the requirements of Measure A is that the local agencies maintain the level of spending for road maintenance, the same level of spending as they did prior to the Measure A funding becoming available, and that's called the maintenance of effort. So the idea was, when it was presented to the voters, agencies were spending this much money on road maintenance, and the idea was the Measure A was not to supplant that or replace that, but to add to it. So you had to still keep spending the same amount you were, adjusted for inflation, and the Measure A was like this on top to help catch up and to help increase road maintenance. And actually, it's actually for a few other related things as well, which I'll mention in a minute. But anyway, so that's the maintenance of effort requirement. Also, we're required to spend some of the money on alternative transportation type projects. So I'll discuss this a little bit more later, but that includes pedestrian, bicycle, and transit-related projects. And then also with Measure A, there's a Citizens Oversight Committee, and each agency's spending is audited annually. So regarding the circulation improvements, for Solvang, we have $3 million that's earmarked for circulation improvements, and these are for improvements along Highway 246 and the arterials and major collector streets within Solvang. So we really have two main arterials in Solvang, and that's Alamo Pintado Road and Alisal Road, and then we have several collector roads, which would be like Adderdag and Chalk Hill Road, and some others like Oak Street here. And there's several what we refer to as collector roads, where smaller roads feed into those. So for the $3 million circulation improvements, currently $600,000 is allocated for the South Alisal Road pavement reconstruction project, and that project is currently under design. It's about 75% complete. So in about 2 months, we'll be going out to bid on that project, and with the intent to bring that to the City Council for your consideration just prior to the end of this fiscal year, so that construction can start promptly in July of next fiscal year. And so we've already executed a cooperative agreement with SBCAG for allocating $600,000 of the circulation improvement funds towards that project. The other project on the list is the Highway 246 bridge replacement and widening at Alamo Pintado Creek. So this is something that's kind of been looked at off and on by the city over the years, but ultimately past city councils determined that it should be Caltrans responsibility to replace the bridge and widen the bridge, the existing Highway 246 bridge over Alamo Pintado Creek. That's on the city's eastern boundary there. Staff has been pushing Caltrans for literally, we've had several meetings and emails and things going back over the last 5 years. And we finally, about a year and a half ago, succeeded getting Caltrans to put that project into their SHOP program, which is like a major maintenance program that they have. And so they're planning to spend about $12 million to replace the bridge there. And that's scheduled, the construction is scheduled for fiscal year 26-27. So Caltrans' position, though, on that project is that they're just going to replace the bridge. But if the city was able to come to the table with 1.2 million was the specific number that they requested, then that could free up additional funding of a couple million, state funding, to do widening and pedestrian and bicycle improvements along with the bridge replacement. So the city will greatly leverage that money, by participating in the project at that amount. It was actually in January, so it was about a year ago that Caltrans kicked off their environmental scoping for the project. So they kind of analyze the extent of impact that the project might have and create like this envelope that they then do their environmental review within that envelope. And so the project is moving forward slowly, so that's earmarked for 1.2 million of these $3 million in circulation improvements. And then the last 1.2 million, it's basically still available for the city council to provide us with direction. There've been some variety of ideas of how that money could be utilized. There's no urgency to use it right away or anything, but right now it's currently in our 10-year capital plan to contribute to the Mission Drive East End shoulder widening and bikeway. And that project is the widening of Mission Drive from Pine Street down to Alamo Pintado Road. But like I said, that's just kind of a placeholder for now. In a few months, we'll be bringing the 10-year capital plan before you, along with the budget, and you can provide staff with any type of direction you'd like. So then the revenue estimates, every year SBCAG provides us with a 5-year forecast of Measure A revenues, and this is basically the revenues that the city would get. So you see it's approximately $400,000 a year. It goes up and down for various reasons, but anyway, so it's approximately $400,000 a year in Measure A funding that we receive for this road maintenance activities.
Hey, Matt, can I ask you a couple questions?
Sure, of course.
You were talking about a 1.2 million that we're going to contribute to the overpass on over Alamo Potato Creek, and a 1.2 million on the Mission, potentially on the Mission Road expansion. And I'm seeing $400,000 a year. Do we have to wait 3 years to get to the 1.2 million?
Very good question, and I apologize I haven't made that more clear. So there's a couple different programs within the Measure A overall funding plan. And so there's the Local Roads and Streets program, which we get $400,000 a year, every year on, or approximately, so this shows you the forecast now.
Right.
But in addition to that, over and above that, once Measure A was first passed, they basically put $3 million in an account for these circulation improvements, for these projects that aren't necessarily maintenance related.
So that money is
We have
available
two
to
pots
us
of
at
money.
any time?
Yes, that's correct. Well, we have to give them a little bit of advance notice.
Well, I understand.
Because they have a cash flow that they got to monitor, and there's all other cities doing projects and things. But
then we get additional 400,000 a year.
correct, that is correct.
Do we have to do something to get that, or does it just come to us?
No, that just comes to us. In fact, I always remind them with great pride that that Solvang because of our tourist industry, we generate more than our share of the funding. You know, I mean, some cities, you get what I'm trying to say, right? So we're helping everybody else out. Let me just put it that way. But okay, so that brings us to our program of projects. So the program of projects is basically our 5-year plan of how we're going to spend this approximately $400,000 a year. And, you know, in the past 10 years, there's been a couple years where we've spent very little because we were accumulating those funds to do a larger project in year 2 or 3. And that's what we're doing right now. So we're using some of those funds to finish the design, but we're carrying forward most of this year's funds to add to next year's funds to do the construction of the South LSL Road project. So the South LSL Road project, we're using some of that $3 million for circulation improvements, which can be used for road maintenance, but it also has the additional flexibility to be used for like actual improvements, like new improvements. So we're using $600,000 of that, plus these other local road maintenance, that part of that $400,000 we get each year. And then I'll show you in just a minute, we're using some other funds as well. But so the local roads portion, that approximately $400,000 a year, can be used for you know, roadway maintenance, but also drainage improvements related to the roadway, and also, like I mentioned, that we have to use 15% of it for alternative transportation projects. So that's new sidewalk or repairing and replacing old sidewalk. It's installing new access ramps or repairing and replacing old ones. Also bicycle improvements. So some of the bike lane striping we've done in the past has been paid for by this. And then right now for transit, we haven't used any Measure A funds except several years back, the city council elected to contribute a few $1,000s a year to subsidize the fare for the dial-a-ride transit service. So that's for the disabled and elder or senior citizens, I should say. So we subsidize that with a few $1,000s a year with Measure A funding, but it's only like $2,000 to $3,000 a year. It's a very small amount, but.
Yeah, just a quick question. On the sidewalk improvements, can that money be used to purchase the little blocks of properties? That the
Yes,
city
yes,
has to do as well?
we can use that funding for right-of-way acquisition, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like, so if we don't actually own the land and we need to get more land to widen the street or to build sidewalk or whatever. And in fact, we did use some Measure A funds for exactly that along the east side of Fifth Street here on this project that's just about wrapped up. So. Sure.
Question. The Fifth Street project, how long ago was that approved to go, and what's the percentage of Caltrans versus Solvang's involvement in that?
Yeah, okay, so 2 questions. The first one, that project was approved about 5.5 years ago.
I'm getting asked the questions, that's why I wanted to know.
Yeah, so there's kind of a lengthy story on that, which I'll just keep it brief, but we applied for, so in addition to the circulation improvements, and we got that $3 million, in addition to the local roads program where we get about $400,000 a year, and in addition to a bunch of most of the money going, or a lot of the money going over to Highway 101, they have a few little grant programs. SBCAG uses some of the measuring money that goes into these grant programs. So we applied for grant funding and were successful, and at that time it was a 5-year cycle. And so we applied for grant funding, we got $168,000 in grant funding, but we said, hey, we're not gonna use those until year 5 of this 5-year cycle that they had. And the intent was to do an underground utility district. But, and we were gonna underground all those poles and put the power lines and telephone and cable underground. But PG&E kept jacking up the cost estimate. Initially, it was gonna be, I think it was like 600,000. Then it went to, I think it was like $1 million, and then it went to 2 million. So, and you know, so basically, on your electric bill, everyone pays a little bit of extra money that goes into this pot of money that, that PG&E uses and distributes out to agencies to slowly do underground all the overhead facilities. And it's called it's the Public Utility Commission Rule 20 and Rule 20A program. And so every year we get like, I think it's maybe like about $100,000, no, not that much. It's like $20,000 in credits. So we accumulate the credits really slowly. So, 5 years to get 100,000 credits, something like that. But anyway, so we had a bunch of credits. We were gonna we actually bought some more from the county, Public Works Department, but then PG&E doubled their estimate again right before we were gonna go to construction, and the city council said, that's crazy. I mean, anyway, so the project was canceled. And so then we promptly moved forward with the Fifth Street sidewalk project, because we were waiting to do that. We were gonna tear up the street and everything to underground everything, and we didn't wanna like do new sidewalk and paving and all this, and then just tear it all up, right? Everybody hates that. So, so the plan was to do them nicely in sequence, but then the PG&E undergrounding project just became too cost prohibitive. The city council canceled it. So we still have an underground utility district, and it's still on PG&E's books, so we could revive that project in the future. But at this point, I guess it's not necessarily canceled, it's just shelved, until further notice. But anyway, so that's why, even though we got the grant funding 5 years ago, we were working 3 years on this undergrounding until we finally got ready to go out to bid and everything. We actually got some easements and stuff. And then, the cost estimates came in super high, and, city council canceled the project.
No, thanks.
But, yeah, so, anyway. Okay, so you can see now here, sorry, it's kind of small, the print on here, but hopefully you're able to see that. But trying to think how to explain this to you. So you'll see there's in the second orange row from the top, the heading there says local streets and transportation expenditures, and then the second project, or the second project down, says pavement overlay, repairs, and crack seal. And so in that row, you'll see, in the green columns are the next 4 fiscal years, and then the blue column is the first fiscal year. They evaluate the Measure A program in 5-year increments. So right now, we're in year 1 of this, the first 5-year increment. So that's 2021 through 2025. And then so the fiscal year 25-26 is the first year in the next 5-year cycle. So we have a different color there. But anyway, it's basically showing you, we've been saving up a bunch of money. We've got, let me see here. Yeah, so we've saved up about $900,000 in Measure A funding. We're gonna add $190,000. If you look further to the right, there's a column that says SB1-RMRA. That's the SB1 is the Senate Bill 1, and that's the road maintenance and rehabilitation account. And so we get approximately $200,000 a year for that, or it's actually about $95,000 a year. So, so 2 years worth of that is $190,000. And you see the column where the column heading at the top says local. If you follow down on that column, it says Measure A. It says A, Solvang circulation. I'm sorry, I'm trying to abbreviate things to fit them in there. And so that's $600,000 of those circulation improvements. And then so the estimate for the project is $2.1 million. And we're doing everything we can to try to value engineer everything and come up with the best plan and get so we can attract really competitive bids. And so we're hoping we'll be under 2 million, but the budget is 2.1 million. And we'll have to use somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000 of general fund money. So again, we'll be bringing that to you after we go out to bid for your consideration. But it shows the expenditures. And so in year 5 of this current 5-year cycle, so fiscal year 24-25, if you go down that column, and you see the third orange row down, sort of like 2/3 down the sheet, says alternative transportation expenditures. And so in that fiscal year 24-25, we're going to be doing a bunch of sidewalk work. So since we've been doing all the sidewalk work right now, we're basically going to kind of pull back from that and focus on the asphalt pavement in the city for the next few years. And in fact, in about a month and a half, we're going to have our consultant do a presentation for you on our pavement management system and kind of our next just few year plan of how we're going to spend those money to kind of start bringing back the pavement in the city back into shape. And so the table at the very bottom left, that's just to keep track for us that we're spending 15% of the funds for alternative transportation projects, which in this plan we're going to spend 15.7%. So we meet that requirement, and it basically shows pavement maintenance. Currently, there's no drainage improvements that we're going to be using Measure A funds for. And then it shows the sidewalk infill repair, access ramp, bike lanes. And then it also shows the San Ynez Valley Transit Fare subsidy that I mentioned. So going forward, the next several years, the contribution would just be $3,000 a year. Sorry about that. So that's the program that we're proposing for the next 5 years. Again, it's mainly for road maintenance, and which right now, we've had a lot of other things we've been trying to deal with. Got through the drought successfully, and doing these sidewalk projects. But for the next few years, our focus is the pavement, the asphalt pavement, and getting it in better shape. So we'd like to recommend that the City Council hold a public hearing and take public comment after this, provide staff with any additional direction if so desired, and we ask that you adopt the resolution approving the 5-year program of projects for fiscal years 2022 through 2026. And I'm happy to answer any further questions you have.
Are there any questions of the staff report at this time?
No.
Do we have any feedback from the effort that was done on Byborg, on other places where people constantly request ways to slow down traffic? I know there was some effort on doing some painting, some marking along Byborg to try to slow people down. Has that been successful, or is that something that we might need to consider as part of these improvements, more ways to control traffic?
Sure. Well, we do on Chalk Hill Road, we do have a speed feedback sign there, a permanent solar-powered speed feedback sign. The pavement markings on Viborg, we just did some speed surveys, and we need to analyze and compare that with the speed. We finished them in late 2020. But we want to compare that with the last prior ones, which were 2016, and see, because the markings on the pavement happen between those time. But we don't think it actually, the special pavement markings actually had much of a impact. But adding the edge striping for the lanes did. Feel that actually did help. The other pavement markings, probably not so much. But we can designate some funding for speed feedback signs or other measures if you like. I know, for example, on Chalk Hill and Atterdag, where we do have the bike lane striped, We have gotten a couple requests to do the double stripe, you know? I don't know if you've kind of, like on Fjord Drive, we kind of have a double stripe, you know, so it's kind of like this buffer area. That's what it's intended, so if somebody veers off a little bit, they're driving, they're not gonna instantly be right into the bike lane. So we've had requests for that type of striping, and which we can easily incorporate into any one of our pavement maintenance projects. Pretty much every pavement maintenance project, there is some striping work because you have stop bars and stop legends that you have to repaint and all that. So it's easy to add those kind of things in. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, I apologize, but
No, that's right. I'm pleased to hear that we have a way of measuring the success rate of these projects. Yeah, thank you.
Are any of the projects that you have coming up, will they address maybe some of the issues at the intersection of Alamo Pintado and Viborg? To try to make that a safer intersection, which then might help slow the speed down of some of the people going into the corridor, the Viborg corridor. And then on the other end, just
yeah, sure.
sidewalk improvement or any type of sidewalks on Friedensburg so that it's safer for people to walk along from Chalk Hill to Viborg, at least. Is this any type of these funds that could possibly be used for that type of?
Yes. So if you'd like, we can go ahead, if the city council wants to direct us now, we can incorporate some traffic calming measures there at the intersection of Alamo Pintado and Viborg. That was the first, am I following you correctly?
Yeah,
That's the
that
first location? Yeah, that intersection. And then we do have plans, we're gonna need to reconstruct the water line on Friedensburg Canyon Road. The water line, I don't know who decided to do it like this, but the water line's down along the side of the creek for like most of the stretch from Chalk Hill Road to Viborg and actually, to about Viborg. There's a little bit where it kind of veers back into the road, but that whole stretch, it's down in the creek, and there's one place where the pipe's actually slightly exposed, not right at the bottom of the creek, it's kind of on the bank where there's been some sloughing. So we're gonna be showing you that project in our 10-year plan when you see it here in a few months to replace that water line. And so the plan would be to consider road improvements after that, because we're gonna have to tear the road up and do this trench in the road and move the water line. But so we can include that as well.
Okay,
You know.
that would be really
I
nice.
have another question, or a question. When you were talking about the bike lanes, you were talking about maybe doing 2 lines so that,
Yeah, have you seen the striping on Fjord Drive?
I'm just wondering about if you got somebody who's going to cross one line, I'm not sure they wouldn't cross the other. Has there been any thought about bus dots or any kind of rumble thing that you could put to the left of the lane so that there would be immediate feedback?
Yeah,
the
you know,
driver?
that's a good point. The buffered bike lanes with the 2 stripes frequently do have little delineators or the large like dots
Yeah, bus dots.
in there.
dots,
So
yeah.
they frequently do that, and we can do that.
It just seems that would get, I mean, if you're inattentive enough to cross one lane, you're inattentive enough to cross both. I was just thinking something that would get your attention would be more, especially, vehicle versus a bicycle situation, so.
Yeah, no, it's a very good idea. We've considered that, and we definitely can do that. It's just that in the past, the support for bike lanes and this type of thing has kind of vacillated. And we've been trying to implement the bike lane features kind of gently in the city so people can get kind of used to it. And I would hate to do something, so I'm trying to protect you from a lot of grief
I'm more concerned about protecting the bicyclists, frankly.
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, we're happy to do whatever you request. And certainly there's some stretches where we can do that. But right now, we currently allow the parking in those areas. So, parking's a big issue in the city. And when the town's full, parking kind of spills over back into the residential areas a little bit. Yeah, so we've tried to take a more gentle, softer approach in introducing these bike lanes to the community. At the city council's direction to proceed with the bike lanes, of course, but we're happy to do that if, to add some other delineators and other measures.
I would like that at least to be a consideration in the final project.
Sure, okay. Yeah, so this is a 5-year plan, so what we can do is, the next time maintenance scheduled for those roads, we would have to, basically, if we overlay or do a slurry seal, if we do an asphalt overlay or do a slurry seal, and you have to restripe everything, that's the perfect time to implement the little additional safety measures.
Thank you.
So we can definitely do that.
Great, thank you. Are there any other council comments up here? Seeing none, we'll take it to public comment.
There's nobody from the public in person. Would anybody online on Zoom like to make public comment on this item? If so, please raise your hand using the Zoom hand feature. Or just unmute yourself. Seeing none.
All right, so I declare the public hearing is now closed, and I bring it item back to the council for discussion. Are there any other additional council comments?
Only the fact that, Matt, you're such a dedicated guy, and only a guy like yourself can say waterline and laugh. He lives this stuff, and I appreciate the way you look at the city and what you do.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Would anybody like to make a motion to accept?
Sure, I'll move that we approve this budget.
So the motion is to adopt resolution number 211130, approving the Measure A 5-year local program of projects for fiscal years 2022-2026. You'd like that to be a motion?
That's the motion.
Can
Thank
I
you.
have a second?
I'll second it.
Go ahead.
I'll second the motion.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Uriga.
Yes. And Madam Clerk, we can,
Thank you.
thank you,
Thanks,
Matt.
Matt.
Thank you.
Really appreciate all the work.
Okay.
Like
Next
to-
item on the agenda is item number 7. It is the appointment of Design Review Committee. The item in front of you is to consider appointment of Design Review Committee meetings. You just approved the second and final hearing of the ordinance to form this committee earlier tonight. That committee will be valid 30 days from now. We did originally have only 4 applications as of the time when agenda was prepared, and those were included in your agenda packet. As of now, I received an additional application on Friday evening, which was distributed to the public and the council on Saturday, and that was from Brian Deputy. I received yet another application this morning from Esther Jacobson Bates, and that was also distributed both to the public and the council and is online. And then right before the council, I received an application from Collie Louis Joy, and that application was just is in front of you, printed out which is the latest application. And there's also a copy for a public review of that. So we have now 7 applications in total. The council has discussed in prior meetings the process for appointment of the design review committee members, and your direction at that point was to, and it's included in the formation of this committee, that you would appoint a committee member. Each of you would appoint a committee member, which would be subject to ratification by majority council, similar to how you appoint the planning commissioners. I would probably recommend opening it to public comment first, if there is any, before you start making the appointments, and then we'll just, same as we handled the planning commission, take one individual appointment at a time and have majority council ratify that appointment.
Okay, sounds good. So we have any public comment at this time?
Would anybody on Zoom, there's nobody in person, would anybody on Zoom like to make a public comment on this item? I see one hand, that's Jennifer Dryden-Hess. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I did submit my application over a month ago, and I really would be excited to continue my work on the council as a design review committee. So thank you for consideration this evening. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to make a public comment on this item? Please raise your hand or unmute yourself. See no more public comment.
All right. So just like to open it up right now to appointments.
Yes.
I'd like to appoint Patrick Kavanaugh. Mr. Patrick Kavanaugh, please.
Okay.
Okay.
I will take a roll call on that. Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Urick.
Yes.
Okay, passes 5-0.
Right.
I'll go next, I guess. I'd like to nominate Brian Deputy.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Urick.
Yes. I'd like to nominate Esther Bates.
Thank you. Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Urick.
Yes.
I would like to nominate Jennifer Dryden-Hess.
Good.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Urick.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I would like to nominate Joy Cooley.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Urick. All pass unanimous.
Yes. I believe it's Coley Joy.
No.
Is Joy's the last name according to this?
Well, I think it's Joy's her first name.
Yeah,
I believe,
Joy's her first.
Is that right?
Is it?
It does
I
say
know the
first
lady.
name
I was-
Polly, but
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry about that. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for applying, and we have quite a few projects getting ready to come through the next 6 months or so, and we're looking forward to the actions that the Design Review Committee has and the suggestions that they have for downtown, as well as some of the building projects coming through. So I'd like to again thank you all for your applications and for your interest in the city. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of item number 8?
Item number 8 is the update regarding the sixth cycle regional housing needs allocations. There's no action with this item at this point. This is simply informational presentation. We have, let's see, Michael Becker with SBCOG joining us, who has been leading this effort countywide to update and allocate the numbers with all the cities in the county. And Michael, I would just go ahead and hand it over to you, please.
All right, thank you, Mayor and council members. And I do have a quick question for Zena. I didn't know if you were going to share the PowerPoint or if I should do it.
Either way works.
Uh, If possible, I prefer you share it.
Okay.
Makes my screen a little bit clearer. And I'll just say next slide whenever we get there. So,
Okay, you should be able to see it now.
yes, thank you, Zena. So good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Mike Becker. I'm the Director of Planning for SB CAG, and I appreciate the invitation to engage with you tonight. There are a lot of new faces on the council since I've last had this opportunity, but I'm pleased to be back. This evening's presentation will offer a crash course in RENA, and I'll provide an update on where we are in the 6-cycle process. Next slide, please. RENA is the acronym for Regional Housing Needs Allocation, though the acronym is what you'll commonly hear. So if you can remember RENA, you don't need to remember Regional Housing Needs Allocation. The process is essentially the state's fair share housing law, and it occurs in 3 broad phases, with SBCAG playing a role in 2 of them. The first phase is determining what the region's housing need is for an 8-year period, 2023 to 2031 in the case of the 6th cycle. The formula for calculating the need is defined in state law. Through the process, the state's Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, consults with SBCAG. SBCAG's primary role in this phase is to ensure accuracy of the data and the calculations used, as well as to ensure everything is accounted for, that the law is applied fairly, and that things such as new housing units constructed by UCSB or, for instance, the North County Jail are accounted for in the process. The results of this first phase is a number for the entire region, for the 8 cities and the unincorporated county in Santa Barbara County. We recently received our final determination, which I'll discuss more in a minute. In the second phase, SBCAG works with the region's local agencies to develop a methodology to allocate the region-wide number to the county's 9 local agencies. And I'll touch more on this in a bit too. And then the final phase is accomplished by each local government. So the city of Solvang will be tasked with this eventually. And it involves updating plans as needed to accommodate the allocated number of housing units. This is accomplished in the time between SBCAG's adoption of the final RENA plan and the due date of the upcoming housing units, which will be February 2023. Next slide, please. And now a bit more on the first phase, the calculation of the region's 8-year housing need. As I mentioned, the formula is defined in state law. It begins with the region's forecasted population for the end of the 6th cycle, so 2031 in this case. From that, the existing population, as well as the number of people living in group quarters, such as college students, senior center residents, or people incarcerated, are subtracted. And this identifies the number of people that will need to be housed by the year 2031. That number is converted to housing units through a data-based formula maintained by the state's Department of Finance. And you now arrive at the number of housing units needed by the year 2031. To complicate this a bit, various state laws then add adjustment factors to that number. And as an example of that, if a region has a very low vacancy rate for, say, rentals or owner-occupied units, then a number of units are added to help achieve the desired vacancy rate. Next slide, please. The 6th cycle is the first that is subject to a new law, SB 828, which was passed in 2018. SB 828 added 2 new adjustment factors, one for cost burden, meaning the proportion of households expending more than 35% of their income on housing, and one for overcrowding, which is more than 1 person per room, though that includes a living room. So A one-bedroom apartment with 2 people would not be considered overcrowded, but a one-bedroom apartment with 3 people would be considered overcrowded. Finally, SB 828 also changed the calculation for vacancy rate. And SB 828 is the reason why our determination in this 6th cycle is significantly higher than that of past cycles. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as the number of housing units needed for the region. The units are divided across 4 income groups. The proportion in each income group is equal to what is currently on the ground in Santa Barbara County. So for instance, you see on the screen there that above moderate, greater than 120% AMI. AMI refers to the area median income, which is roughly $77,000. So look, that group would be households earning, roughly more than $100,000 a year. So currently about 43% of the region's population falls into that category. So therefore, our number going forward would be 43% in that category. And here at the bottom of the screen, you can see our 6th cycle determination being 24,856 housing units for the entire region over an 8-year period. And it's split among those 4 income groups. At its meeting next week, the SBCAG board will be asked to accept the determination or direct staff to file an objection to the determination. Next slide, please. The second phase in developing is developing the methodology to allocate the region's number to all local agencies. State law defines a series of 5 objectives that whatever methodology is chosen, or whatever we choose to use as a region, that it's required to seek to advance those 5 objectives, which you can see them on your screen. I'll touch on briefly. Increase the supply and mix of housing types, tenure and affordability. Promote infill development and socioeconomic equity. Promote an improved relationship between jobs and housing. Seek to balance the income groups across the region. And the last one is also new, is affirmatively further fair housing. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the methodology supported by the SBCAG board. It is currently under review by the state's Housing and Community Development, and in March we expect to ask the SBCAG board to formally adopt it. The methodology first splits the region's number into 2 pots, a North County pot and a South County pot. And that division is based solely on jobs, so a 60% weighting on existing jobs and a 40% weighting on forecasted future job growth. The end result of that is also roughly a 60-40 split, with about 60% of the housing units assigned to the South County and about 40% assigned to the North County. The second step in that 2-step methodology is to allocate to the subregional pots based on a formula that considers cost burden and overcrowding. This was selected first because it supports achieving the objectives that I mentioned, and second, because much of the number of our regional number resulted from SB 828. The overcrowding, the cost burden, and the change of the vacancy rate is what took us to nearly 25,000 in this cycle from about 11,000 8 years ago. Next slide, please. This slide highlights where the allocations are assigned by our methodology. On the right, you can see the 60-40 split. The San Ynez Valley, which includes the unincorporated as well as the 2 cities, receives roughly 2.6% of the region's total number. Next slide, please. And here is the result for each jurisdiction. And you can see, for instance, the city of Santa Barbara gets the most, with roughly 32% of the entire region's number going to the city of Santa Barbara. And Solvang comes in at less than 1%. I believe it's 0.8%. And really the reason why the Solvangs is so low, number one, because you're in the North County, so you're starting with that smaller pot. But number 2 is that second step, assigning housing by cost burden and overcrowding. It's not nearly a problem in the San Ynez Valley or in the city of Solvang as it is elsewhere, say for the City of Guadalupe, City of San Maria, City of Lompoc. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we're required to divide the allocation along the 4 income groups, and it cannot be a straightforward split. One of those objectives is to seek to balance the income groups across the region, and that includes what exists on the ground today, as well as what's going to be built in the future. And that's essentially to ensure that no one jurisdiction houses more than its fair share of any income group. The formula for this is based on each jurisdiction's number compared to the regional average and then amplified by 1.5 times. So for instance, say we have for the above moderate category, the regional average is 43%. If a jurisdiction is at 42%, then that difference is the nexus that we base the formula off of. And the result of that is cities like Lompoc and Guadalupe receive a small share of the very low and low income group and bigger numbers of the moderate and above moderate as an attempt to seek to balance it across the region. Next slide, please. So this is essentially a graphic of what I was just discussing. On the left side, the four columns under the existing there shows how the city stacks up as compared to the region. And the city of Solvang is already fairly well balanced and pretty reflective of the region. But if you look up at, say, for instance, Guadalupe, you got some extremes with high numbers of very low income households and low numbers of above moderate income households. So on the right, the second set of 4 columns, is you see what the RENA allocation does as it gets rid of some of those reds and oranges, and you see more greens. And that's we're adding in the draft RENA allocations on top of the existing households to see how we work towards parity. Had we chosen to turn the dial any further to try and work towards parity quicker, we would have ended up with negative allocations. So essentially, we're pushing it as far as we can in one RENA cycle. Next slide, please. And here's essentially a graphic of each jurisdiction's allocation by income level. Since Solvang is already fairly well balanced, the allocations are fairly close to what you already have on the ground. So again, just using Guadalupe as an example, in the middle of the screen there, you can see a very large above moderate and just a small share of the very low. Next slide, please. This table shows the draft allocations, and please note that these are not final until the SBCAG board formally adopts the methodology, which we expect during the March meeting. Solvang is expected to receive an allocation of roughly 190 units. In the prior cycle, the city had an allocation of 175 units. So despite the fact that we're 2.5 times the number region-wide, the city of Solvang's number only went up by 15 units. And as I mentioned, that's really a reflection of the fact that Solvang doesn't struggle with overcrowding and cost burden, at least to the degree of other cities in the region. Next slide, please. So this just shows our next steps through the process. Currently, the Housing Community Development is reviewing our methodology. When that comes back, we'll be asking the SBCAG board to formally adopt it. We also just recently received the regional determination, the final version of it. We brought it to our advisory committee last week, and we'll be bringing it to the SBCAG board to ask whether to accept it or to file an objection with the state's Housing Community Development. Following that, SBCAG will issue draft allocations to each jurisdiction, and that starts an appeals process where a jurisdiction may appeal their own allocation or another jurisdiction's allocation. And finally, we expect to have the final RENA plan adopted by the SBCAG board in August of this year. And then that essentially relieves SBCAG of its duties, and it turns it to each city and the county to update their housing elements if needed. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions you might have. And you're also welcome to reach out to me with any questions if something pops up or you have a question from a constituent. I'm here and available to answer your questions. Thank you.
If I have one just to confirm, and maybe it's just for the report, on our last page, it showed the tentative RENA allocations, and what was showing up here was 191, but on our report, it showed 225.
Yes, Councilmember. Just last week, we received the final determination, and I think I had already sent a copy of some draft language to Zena for your staff report. And once we received that, we worked the new number, we worked it into our formulas to get the new one. So it's really just, you were right in that window of the staff report went out right before we received the final determination.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Are there any questions of the council at this time?
I don't think I understand, and I'm sorry. What does that spread of that 191, what does that allocation mean? What do we have to do to support it? How do we change things? Where's this going? I'm a little lost.
Yeah, so Councilmember Infante, so whenever the city receives its allocation following when the SBCAG board adopts the RENA plan, then the city is required by state law to accommodate that number of housing units in its housing element. So I don't know what the city has like currently to accommodate of unbuilt capacity, but if it's short of 190 units or 175 units, then they would be required to update the housing element to accommodate that. And that would be through zoning. I think it doesn't necessarily mean that all those units will get built. Historically, the region has delivered about half of the units assigned to it. But we have to show the state that, if there's the developers coming in and supposing there's not a water moratorium or something, that we could accommodate that number of housing units over an 8-year period.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, Mr. Becker?
No.
So are these 191 units that we are falling short on, that we need to account for, whether it is that we build them or we rezone or whatever?
Councilmember, I would not say that it's short on them. So RENA is largely forward-looking. So it's what, through the state's formulas, what they have determined, your need over the next 8 years is going to be. So they just want to make the states, through this process, make sure you have the capacity to satisfy that demand.
This would be something going forward that would be in our housing element, in our general plan.
The general plan upgrade that we're trying to get done right now.
Exactly.
Correct.
So we have to have adequate zoning that would allow for those types of numbers in each of those categories.
Yes.
Yes.
But we're all, not all, we are pretty built out in this town. That is where I get really confused. So, when I ask, what are we supposed to do? I'm still a little bit lost as what we can accomplish.
So I think your situation is not unique, Councilmember. For instance, the city of Santa Barbara is going to end up with a number of about 8,000. So they're going to struggle to accommodate that. I will say with the state's new accessory dwelling unit law, a good proportion of your housing units could be accommodated through assumptions related to accessory dwelling units. And also, there's likely quite a bit of zoned capacity still on the books from the previous cycle. So you're not going to have to find sites for 190 new units. It's likely a much smaller portion of that.
Can I make one comment on that? through my business, I see probably an ADU every 2 or 3 weeks coming through the works. That's not specifically right in Solvang, it could be anywhere here in the valley, but I think that's going to be a big, big chunk of those numbers is going to come through ADUs.
I would think that would be really the predominant way it's going to happen. And we can't, I mean, the ADUs started a while ago with the state law that allowed that. So, yeah, I see that's the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that said, all of the ADUs that have been permitted up to this point are not counted towards this number, correct? This is a future.
It's only been really pushed, I'm sorry to interrupt, my
No.
apologies. But they will, because it's been recent, it wasn't until recent that those things really started getting pushed and the widespread knowledge came out. People are like, I can? Oh, really? So that's, I think you're seeing a lot more public information out there where those are going, and I think you'll see more and more of those in the years to come.
Agreed. Are there any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Becker, for being here. We appreciate your time.
Yes.
And there's no action that needs to be taken. This is informational only.
Correct.
And Madam City Clerk, would you please read the title of item number 9?
Item number 9 is a B1234 report out and council closing comments.
Anybody have any reports?
Nothing to report out, no closing comments.
I listened in on a couple of the SBCAG meetings, including where they were talking about the arena. But the T-TAC, the J-TAC, and the other TAC, whichever one that one was, I forget now. One's transportation, one's, that's the J one. Is the, yeah. These are different projects going on and what's being funded. There's still a lot of interest in that. There's things coming up that are going to help Solvang. There's a lot of stuff going on in the county, including some of the highway widenings. You heard Matt talking about some of the stuff that's going on as the Mission A funds are going in. So you're going to start to see that coming up. There's a lot of emphasis on mass transportation, and we'll see where that goes. No specifics at this point, just it's happening and I'm watching it as much as I can. Thank you.
All right. And then just lastly, for the same group, SBCAG, Councilmember Infante and myself will be attending an orientation meeting this Wednesday to just get ourselves even further caught up with SBCAG and RENA. So, and are there any other closing council comments? Otherwise, meeting is adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry. No? I saw her finger pointing right at you.
I saw each
All right.
microphones.
Meeting is adjourned.